Number 1. The Crawlspace. I was always afraid of closed-in spaces. I think after all of this, I ended up absolutely terrified of closed-in spaces. When I was a teenager, I had a small black cat that I was extremely fond of. She was a completely inside cat. However, she had a tendency to try and get out of the house. The ironic thing was that although she tried to get out whenever she could, she was always completely terrified whenever she did get out. She would panic and hide somewhere, and then incessantly meow until one of us was able to retrieve her. And although she wanted to go back inside, she wouldn't cooperate getting her back there. And for example, more than once, she got under the pickup truck outside. She'd crawl up into the frame or something. We'd have to get under the truck and practically pry her out of there. She never got into a tree, though. Well, anyway, when I was 16 years old, my family went to visit relatives. I really wasn't in the mood to go, so I stayed home with the cat. For the most part, things were okay, as I really didn't leave the house for any reason. However, on the weekend, I had some money that my parents gave me to order a pizza. So I did. And when the pizza guy came, I had to grab the money quickly because it had come much quicker than I had expected. The pizza guy was very awkward and had a hard time both handing me the pizza and taking the money. He also had his change on him, and I stood there with the door open, trying to finish the transaction. Right when he was handing me my change, the cat took off out the door. I had the pizza in my hands, so I had to go put it and the money down. And by the time I got out of the house, I hadn't seen where the cat went. I don't know how long I looked for the cat. I asked the pizza guy not to drive out right away in case the cat was under the car, but he didn't listen to me. I checked inside the pickup truck, the garage, everything. When I was about to lose hope, although I knew I wouldn't give up, I finally heard a meowing noise. So I followed it and found out where the cat was. On the side of our house, there were missing bricks that led directly into the crawlspace of the house. Although I never knew what they were for exactly, I always assumed that they were there to keep the yard from flooding. They led directly into the crawlspace under the house. I can't tell you how much I didn't want to go into the crawlspace. The idea of being trapped in such a tight, enclosed area was terrifying. I tried everything I could think of to get the cat to come out. I opened up a can of wet cat food and held it in the hole. The cat kept meowing, but she didn't come out. I broke out some cold cuts, ham, turkey, and even some expensive roast beef, but nothing worked. I hoped I'd have better luck with the catnip, but that yielded no result either. I knew I'd have to crawl under and get her. I used a flashlight to find where she was. She was on the far end from the entrance. I got down on my hands and knees, and then finally on my belly, and began crawling under. As I crawled, I couldn't keep the flashlight on her, but would occasionally flash it to make sure she didn't move. It was the scariest feeling of my life. It felt like the whole world was closing in on me, and it was both dirty and dark. And my claustrophobia made it seem like the house was going to fall down on me. Finally, after struggling along, the cat was finally in reach. Of course, she moved a bit away, but I finally got a hold on her. It was going to be a pain getting out of there. And it was then that I noticed a smell which seemed very out of place. It smelled like cucumbers. I thought it was odd, but didn't really care at first. That was before I heard something in the corner. I realized I had been hearing this noise the entire time I was down there, only I figured it was the cat. I took the flashlight and shined it over at the corner of the house. I almost dropped the cat and messed myself. In the corner of the crawlspace was the scariest looking copperhead I had ever seen in my life. I was already freaked out by the enclosed area, but that just made it worse. I panicked and hit my head trying to rise up. I began crawling and shimmying away from the snake and back to the entrance to the crawlspace. I was freaking the cat out and I got clawed, and she was meowing like crazy, but I figured she'd be happier once I got her out of there too. I didn't even look back once. I think if I saw the snake coming towards me, I would have had a heart attack. But by not looking, I just kept expecting to feel it bite me. I had never been so afraid. I had never felt my heart beating that fast. It didn't stop when I finally made it to the entrance to the crawlspace. I almost lost the cat again, but we managed to get out without getting bitten. However, I still didn't look back. I jumped up, the cat hanging from my arms, and booked up the steps to the house. Into the house. Slammed and locked the doors because, of course, it was necessary to lock the door to get away from a snake. I had to call wildlife removal to come and get the snake out. I just stayed in the house the entire time. I will never go into a crawl space again, cat or no cat. Number 2. Kate. Lots of kids actually have imaginary friends. Hell, I think at this point that plenty of adults have imaginary friends too. But while my little brother Kevin did have an imaginary person, it wasn't his friend. In fact, he was quite terrified of who we generally referred to as his imaginary bully. I should preface this by saying I do not feel that this story is paranormal. I don't believe in ghosts. Does that mean that I really know what happened in this story? No, I don't. But I do not think it was a spirit. So, anyhow, my brother Kevin had an imaginary bully named Kate. She began appearing before Kevin was 5 years old. I think the first time I remember hearing about her, Kevin had come and asked if he could sleep in my bedroom. I asked him why, and he told me that a girl named Kate was in his room, talking to him from under his bed. Alarmed, thinking that someone may have broken into the house, I ran over to his bedroom and looked everywhere. Nothing was in there. I figured it was a bad dream, or simply his imagination. I did let him sleep in my room, though. Kate quickly became a mainstay around our house. Normally, she would be under Kevin's bed, or she would be in his closet. Often, she would be in the bathroom if he was taking a bath, or just using the bathroom. She would always be around whenever Kevin was by himself, and she would say some of the worst things to him. I always wondered how Kevin had heard any of these things, actually. She apparently had very long fingernails, and she told Kevin that she would claw his eyes out. This was something she said often. At least, that was what he told us. I don't mean to make us look callous either. Sure, we didn't believe in Kate, but we never treated Kevin poorly about it. We didn't leave him alone if he didn't want to be alone. I guess, in a way, we were probably enabling him. If he could use stories of Kate to get what he wanted, it made sense he would do that more often. Things got really scary one afternoon that my parents were away. I was babysitting Kevin, who was in his room playing. I suddenly heard a loud, slamming sound followed by a scream. I bolted up out of my chair. Immediately, I then heard another sound coming from upstairs. It was another slamming door. I ran over to the bottom of the steps to find Kevin just at the top, and he ran down the stairs. His face was bleeding around his eyes, and he was, of course, crying. And beyond that, he was completely hysterical. I tried to calm him and clean him up so he wouldn't get blood in his eyes. When I finally got Kevin calm enough to ask him what had happened, His answer did surprise me. He told me that Kate was in his closet. She had pulled him into the closet, slammed the door, and tried to claw his eyes out. She struggled and was able to get away. I was worried that someone must have broken into the house. It took me a while, but I did convince Kevin to wait downstairs while I checked out his room. I took the poker from the fireplace. I then slowly crept up the stairs. I hadn't heard any noise from upstairs, and figured if someone had been in Kevin's room, they would have to still be there. I was scared as I slowly crept up the stairs. I had the poker in hand. When I got to the top, I looked over at the door to Kevin's room. I nervously made my way over to the door. I put my hand on it, opened the door, and quickly scanned the room. I first went over to the bed and checked under it. Nothing was there. Kevin's closet door was closed. I put my hand on it, opened the door. Kevin's closet was empty. I stepped inside the door to look behind some things, and the moment I was inside the closet, the door slammed shut on me. I almost dropped the poker. Turning around, I felt for the doorknob, finally found it, and opened the door. I was ready to swing the poker and hit whoever was out there, but there was no one. After scanning the room, I noticed something very frightening, however. Kevin's bedroom window was open, and there was no screen in it. I closed and locked it. I called my parents about the situation, and they came home to take Kevin to the hospital. My dad nailed Kevin's bedroom window closed. I don't know if Kate was someone who had broken into the house. I don't know if she had been getting into the house on a regular basis and scaring my brother. I don't know if it was all in his imagination. But I do know his imagination did not close that closet door on me. And furthermore, I know that for some reason, after nailing that window closed, Kevin stopped seeing Kate. Number 3. Grandma's Cellar. Maybe the only thing worse than being scared of something is being forced to confront that fear due to another scary situation. Me, I've always been scared of my grandma's cellar. She had a small cellar that she never used. Her house was really old, and the previous owners used it to keep jarred goods in. My grandma never used it for that reason. She simply kept some storage down there. I don't know where my fear from the cellar came from, but for some reason, I always found it as creepy as hell. When my grandma got really old, she decided she was ready to stay in a senior housing apartment. My family then moved into her house. I was about 10 at the time. I liked the house, but I hated that damn cellar. My dad would store some things down there, like tools and light bulbs and such. Occasionally, he would send me down to get something, and I always found myself running back up the stairs and then slamming the door behind me from the moment I got to the top. When I was 17, I was still scared of the cellar. I had a moment when I had to really confront that fear. There was a group of guys in school that I was at odds with for quite a while. I had actually been the victim of some violence from them on occasion. When my family was going to my grandma's for the weekend, somehow this group found out about it. I got a little sick at the last minute, so I ended up not going. I stayed home on the couch watching TV. At some point, I fell asleep on the couch. We had a timer on the TV, and it went off some time after I fell asleep. I was woke up pretty late at night when I heard something at the front door. The family room was at the back of the house. I got up, went down the hallway, and was shocked when I saw a group of 3 teenage boys breaking through the front door. I recognized the guys as that group I was afraid of. Bad thing was also that they had gotten into the house. I didn't have time to go get the phone and call the cops. I tried to run off as quickly as I could and do something. I honestly have no idea what I was trying to do, but I just knew I had to try and get away from those guys. They noticed me pretty quickly, and I had barely made it to the back of the house before they grabbed me. It didn't take them long to figure out what they wanted to do with me, and it was the thing I feared most. Taking me over to the cellar door, they opened the cellar, roughly pushed me down the stairs. They got some rope and tied my hands and ankles up, and then turned the lights out. I was left on the floor of the place I was most scared of. And worse than that, I knew my parents wouldn't be coming home anytime soon. Also, the cellar was a complete underground cellar. There were no windows, so when the sun came up eventually, there would be no light. I listened to the intruders while they ransacked our house. Eventually, they left, and I was left alone in the quiet and dark. So there I was, in the freaky cellar, alone, in the dark. And being so quiet, I really began hearing things. I did eventually doze off again too. And when I woke up, it was because there was a noise, and I could have sworn that it was the noise of someone walking around in the cellar. In fact, after hearing it for a while, I was sure that there was someone down there with me. My mind started racing, going through all of the possibilities for what it could have been. Could someone have come down there after I was thrown down? The light switch was outside the door, so they would have come downstairs in the dark. And the scariest thing occurred to me. If someone were there in the dark, they must have already been in the cellar before I was thrown down there. And I heard them walking around, moving things around. I was distinctly aware of it. I tried calling out and talking to the person, but I never got any response. But I knew I heard someone down there. Even though I was terrified, I was also exhausted. I did eventually fall asleep again. And what woke me up the next time was the light flipping on. And when the light flipped on, there was someone in there with me. An old, nasty woman was sitting on the far wall, looking at me. She hadn't turned on the lights, though. The police had come down the stairs and saw me tied up. One of my neighbors passing by had noticed signs of the break-in and called the cops. The old woman was arrested. It turns out that she was a homeless person who had gotten into the house after the robbers left. She accidentally locked herself in the cellar with me when she came downstairs. She panicked when she heard me down there and just tried to keep herself incognito. She was just a scavenger who fell on a bit of bad luck, but still, she scared the crap out of me. Hey y'all, Killer Orange Cat here. If you like this video, please let me know by hitting the like button. If you're not already subscribed to Killer Orange Cat, please consider hitting the subscribe button below, or use the icon of Ichigo that will appear at the end of this closing. Feel free to leave some comments to let me know what you think of the video, and consider sharing it with someone you think might enjoy it. You can always follow me and Ichigo on Facebook and Twitter. If you have a story you'd like narrated on Killer Orange Cat, please email it to the address included in the description. My only requirement is that the story is original, meaning it has not been read on any other YouTube channel. Feel free to join up to the Killer Orange Cat subreddit, and visit my sister's Killer Orange Cat merchandise store to look around. The addresses for both are in the description. I hope you're all doing great, and please don't forget to make sure to check in your closet and check under your bed, because you never know where a Killer Orange Cat might be hiding. Good night.